Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Can I Kick It FC? I'm your host, as always, Elliot Barr. Normally, we are a jovial, upbeat podcast, everything like that, but today we are dealing with a serious topic of racism and how that affected one supporter. Um, so we wanted to put a warning out there first. If you have ever thought about suicide, or struggling with your mental health, or anything like that nature, first of all, we want you to know that we are thinking of you. We are here to support you in anything like that, and to be a listening ear. So, if you have struggled with suicide, or thought about it, you can call 988 is the national hotline number, or for mental health, you can call 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-HELP. So, with that being said, there's no real good way how to transition from this. But once again, if you have been struggling with anything like that, or just need someone to talk to, trust me, there's someone's there for you. So, with that being said, enjoy the episode. Feel free to share it with a friend, and see you guys on the other side of the intro video. Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to this week's episode of Can I Kick It? I'm your host, as always, Elliot Barr, and is joining me is a young lady that has overcome some obstacles in her life, but she's on the other side of it, smiling and profiling. It's Miss Imani Williams. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Getting
All right. Oh, all right. Well, that's cool. That's cool. First of all, before we start, I want to ask you this. I've never personally been to Austin, but how are the tacos?
tacos are banging. Yeah, tacos are banging. Very authentic. Yeah, there's it's hard to like describe because you have your traditional street tacos, you have your elevated tacos, and then you have fusion tacos. You have like Asian Mexican fusion. You've got like yeah, like there's a lot of fusion happening in Austin, like Afro Caribbean and Latino tacos. Like get your taco on a plantain. Like
Hmm.
it's pretty cool. You could literally come here and just eat, but like you can come here and just eat tacos. The next time you come, you can just eat barbecue and just go from there.
Okay. Okay. See, I might have to make that trip because if I'm not mistaken, is Austin hosting a World Cup game?
We're hosting a Copa America game.
Okay,
I
that's what
think
it is.
yeah, we're hosting a Copa America game.
Okay, I might have to make that trip, especially if Jamaica or the USMNT makes it far. Yeah,
Jamaica's coming here. Yeah.
I might have to. I might have to do that because apparently they hate having Jamaica on the East Coast, the bane of my goddamn existence. Uh, yeah, no, it's
Unless it's
annoying.
New
Like
York.
it's annoying as a Jamaica
Mhm.
fan because if they put a game on the East Coast, it would be popping. But that's we're not here to talk about today, Imani. We brought you on today to we wanted you to share your story about what happened in the supporter group section of Boston FC, how that has transitioned into your life and all that stuff in between. But first of all, I'm going to start off with this question for you. How did you get into soccer? How did you grow a love for the game, and how did it all start for you?
Uh, you know, my supporter journey I feel like is different from when I started like playing soccer as a kid and that whole story and but I try to start like the supporter conversation of like when I really started getting into supporter culture, and it was not too long after my dad died. I was about 18, and um I just remember like wanting to kind of get away,
Mhm.
and I really love soccer. My mom was always like, I'm not paying $265 a month for cable because at the time that's how much it cost to get the soccer package. It was all the way up there, And she's like, I'm just going to drop you off at this pub. So she would drop me off at this Irish pub called Anna Liffey's in New Haven. It's not there anymore, but for like 15, 20 years, this place was just like the hub of Irish culture in the city, one of them at least. And yeah, she would just drop me off at the pub in the morning. She would go to church. She'd pick me up later.
Wait, how old are you?
Now when I look back at it, I'm like, you know what? Like, I landed in a really good place. Like, a lot of terrible things could happen to me, like being an 18-year-old girl, like going to this pub full of like random men at 9 a.m. and they're all drinking beer. But like, it all worked out in the end. And I love the Irish community in New Haven. It's had a huge impact on my life. And yeah, so I started watching Liverpool games at Anna Liffey's in the morning. I said, I think in 2009, I went to my first ever game abroad. I went to go see Real Madrid versus Liverpool in 2009. Two very good teams, legendary teams, in fact. And just that experience of being with Liverpool fans away in Seoul, being in the Plaza Mayor, like it still gives me chills because I'm like, this place is on the cover of my Spanish textbook in like 5th grade. And now I'm here jumping up and down, drinking beer with Liverpool fans. And I had a moment where I said, I want U.S. soccer to be like this. I want our culture to grow and us to have vibes and us to have a full scene of fans and supporters. So I came back totally determined, joined American Outlaws, and the rest is history from there.
Wow. Well, no, I mean, that's impressive. It seems like, anytime you talk to a Black supporter, their path to how they became a supporter is always unique and different. It's always fascinating because, like, none of us, outside of a handful, really grew into the game. We're always like, oh, this is the latch on. Oh, this is where I latched on. Oh, this is so. It's cool to hear how you latched on and whatnot. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little concerned because at first I thought your mom was like dropping you off as like a little kid at these bars, and just like go do your thing.
No, I was 17.
Glad
18.
you cleared it up and said you were 18 because that did not sound safe.
Yeah, no, like my first game I think was like one of the build-up games or the final for 2007 for Liverpool, maybe the Chelsea game, and it was packed. It was packed to the brim. But then like the next year I started kind of going more often, and yeah, early in the morning, 9 o'clock, you used to have to go around the corner, down a back alley, through this patio, down the steps. And that was the bar. Like that, the front door was never open. It was like literally like going to a speakeasy, except it was about soccer. And again, I'm just so lucky that I landed on my feet, and there were some really good people there. When you just watch the game on TV, it's totally different experience. And this is like 2007, 2008. So it's before Instagram. It's before Twitter. It's before this kind of totally like global network of people talking online. So you could talk to people who are at the stadium going every week. That wasn't the case. So all of a sudden I was dropped off in this environment, and I was only one of the very few Americans. I was pretty much the only woman, and I was the only Black person for a long time.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So, but I was just very, very lucky. There's a lot of similarities between Black culture and Irish culture. It's actually really, really interesting. Frederick Douglass famously said that, Ireland was the first time a white man ever looked him in the eye. And there's a long history between Black people and Irish people, especially when it comes to colonization, oppression, fighting that oppression. And I find a lot of inspiration in the way Irish people fight oppression and colonization, how they've gotten back, their country for the most part. And they've even like restored their language, which was destroyed. I mean, their religion was destroyed. Their language was destroyed. We understand that, especially as African Americans, what it's like to have an empire take away your language, take away your religion, split up your families. And so, yeah, I always found really good solidarity with the Irish community. And yeah, to this day, I'm like really, really grateful for that experience. It was all expats. And at that point in time, people were just so happy to have somebody to talk to about soccer. You couldn't even go to work. You couldn't go to work at that point and have a conversation about the Champions League. So having a place where you could go and just talk about the game and talk about the players and talk about the banter. And it was the best. And I had a peaceful like 4 years there. And then, bar changes happen, management changes, this and that, whatever. And my experience became like totally different. in a kind of a more of like a negative way. I think it's just crazy how when it was mostly expats and people from abroad that had actually gone to games and people from abroad that had like lived it, I was really well accepted and people were very kind and they were like impressed that I was coherent in the beautiful game and I could again hold my own, hold a conversation with them. And I learned a lot too. I listened a lot because again, there's tons of things you just cannot know. And again, it's easier now, but back then somebody literally had to tell you, what happened, or like, why we don't like, the Tories and why they don't like the royal family. It's like the Scouse Republic of Liverpool. All the history behind Liverpool and the Scouse identity and why people hate Scousers and they say you're going to steal your hubcaps and your wallets and people always judge them by their accents. That's another thing I can relate to is the Scouse accent is very distinct. And I think the African-American community too can also relate to that of like people judging us and making opinions about us just because of the way we talk sometimes. And so, yeah, there was a lot of things that I kind of got with Irish people, Scottish people, Liverpoolians. That was really, really special to me. And yeah, when it was expats, I had a great time. And then all of a sudden, bar manager switches and a lot of people leave to go somewhere else or stop coming or they graduate and they move on because I was in New Haven, which is like pretty much a college town. And when it was all of a sudden, I blinked and it was all American guys. And that's when the problem really started for me. But that was rough. It was a rough time. I actually talked about it on a podcast with Darius Thigpen in 2020. And ironically enough, when I talked about my experience with this Liverpool supporters group, it actually mirrored the exact same thing that would happen to me with Austin FC less than a year or two later. And that's kind of disturbing of like, even before Austin FC kicked a ball and maybe, just when Los Verdes and La Morgue de Austin just started to exist, I had already kind of predicted this potentially happening because it had already happened. And as much as I want culture to change, but in order for culture to change, there needs to be a conscious effort and an acknowledgement that things need to change. And without that, it doesn't matter how liberal you say you are. When it comes down to it, people are just going to make the wrong selfish choice. So, yeah.
I want to. That's a great pivot point because I was getting ready to ask you about like Austin FC and whatnot. So obviously, this is a new team, not new team, but a team that started because what was the order name? Precourt? What's his name? Precourt?
Yeah, Anthony Precourt wanted to move the crew and everyone, like my friends in Liverpool were talking to me about that. Okay, yeah. Like moving a club, like they're gonna be another like Wimbledon and MK Don situation, the stain of the earth. Like it was literally like a crime against football. Like it was like Save the Crew became like an international rally call. Like
I remember. I definitely remember that.
And so, Austin FC is relatively new. Precourt ended up being able to move the team. And it's crazy because, like, a lot of new teams to MLS right now, whether it's St. Louis or Louisville and Cincinnati, they've all kind of had to earn their place in the league. They were smaller markets, and they really had to go out and pack their stadium with 10, 15,000 people in USL, in the lower leagues, every week, every year, to kind of earn the right to have an MLS franchise. But Austin FC just got handed it. Like, it was a boom town. All of a sudden, they just got handed a $250 million stadium. And there was no real strong supporter culture here to kind of make that transition from lower league to MLS. And you already have traditions, you already have culture, and you already have people who are leaders and people who are ready to step up. And it was the dynamic and the motivation behind a lot of the fans was not as authentic as it should be with a game that I feel like should always be about authenticity in the fan culture.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And so I want to ask you this, like, Austin FC, you're one of the starters of the supporters group, all that stuff. How did that journey start for you? Like, how did you get latched on to Austin FC, and how were the early days of you being a supporter of the club?
Yeah, so I originally moved down to Austin because I had some family in Austin. I never really knew growing up, like, didn't know them, like, didn't call on birthdays, didn't see them in the holidays. But I was trying to get to know my family a little bit better at the same time. It was such an innocent thought. I was trying to get to know my family better. So I moved down to Austin. I knew a lot of people with the American Outlaws down in Austin, people I'd met at the World Cup. I had friends down here already. I knew the Liverpool supporters group was really great. I heard good things. And when I'd come to visit, I absolutely loved it. So yeah, I originally moved down to Austin like 2018, 2019. And then yeah, I ended up going abroad, but I immediately got involved with the soccer team or the soccer scene here. Again, going to Liverpool games every week, and then going to watch AO, and just kind of being involved in the kind of keeping an eye on the supporters movement. Like I was at those early Merga practices in the very beginning, and when I went to go abroad due to COVID, I got stuck in the Netherlands, and I was there for like a year. But I never got disengaged. I was one of the people that was encouraging Los Verdes to split from Austin Anthem. The reason was I didn't like one of the first things I did was ask the club president, like I guess they'd been around for like 6 or 7 years, collecting dues for 6 or 7 years. And I said, like, one of my first conversations, I was like, so where's the money been going? Because you guys have been collecting dues. You haven't had any games. Are you like throwing parties? Are you hosting events? Are you giving to charity? And basically that guy ended up getting ousted because there were some shady things happening. But because of that, I was kind of wary of what Austin Anthem was. So I said, yes, form another supporters group, form Los Verdes, go for it. Don't be held back, make it authentic, make it real. And I thought, based on what people were telling me, I try to believe in people. Hopefully that doesn't change, but I think it will after this. And yeah, I was really excited to come back. So I was logging on at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning for these meetings for Austin FC with supporter leadership and with the club and with the team. And that was really special. And I knew what I wanted to do as soon as I got back. I thought I was living the dream. I thought I was living the dream. I'd come back, and from the very beginning, what I've always wanted is kind of like what Anfield has, where you're in the middle of a residential neighborhood and there's people's houses, and all of a sudden you're walking down the street and Anfield just cascades overhead, and all of a sudden, like, you could see the stadium. Highbury is a bit like that as well. Like, we're not Highbury, gosh, the Emirates is a bit like that as well. Where like you're kind of just walking in this neighborhood and they're like, poof, there it is. That's the Emirates around the corner, not in an ocean of parking lots. And that feeling of people living and working and playing out in the streets with that in the background and being in that neighborhood and that kind of thing, back in 2007 didn't really exist in the United States. Like, maybe you had Portland Timbers was still in a relatively commercial area. Seattle was also like a very expensive commercial area. There wasn't like a normal neighborhood with a team. So that was like one of those things I really wanted. I was like, man, I'll know US soccer has arrived. I'll know that we've moved the game forward in this country when you have stadiums that are in people's neighborhoods, and like kids can ride their bikes there and people can walk there from their houses. And that's really special. So when I moved to Austin, I knew I wanted to live by the stadium, because I was like, where am I going to be? I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to be probably at the stadium and doing soccer stuff. So I wanted to live in this neighborhood. It's one of the last working class, middle class neighborhoods in Austin. It's very Black and Latino and very Asian. It's actually, like, I really, really love this neighborhood. It's changing rapidly, gentrification everywhere. But yeah, I love living here, but I purposely live here. Like, every single day on my way to work, I pass 3 sides of Austin FC Stadium and the front office every single time. So I like 6 interactions with Austin FC. Like, I could see the stadium for like a mile and a half straight. And that's just really special to me. That just gives me chills because it was literally like exactly what I've always hoped for. Because in order to get this kind of investment, we had to change the market. That was the whole supporter movement in the beginning. We knew that if we really wanted soccer to stick around, and we didn't, back in 2001, MLS almost folded, so it wasn't even like we were literally fighting for the survival of the league. Can we make this cool enough for fighting for the survival of the league? And so the idea was always to create a scene, make it really cool, make it really fun, and then also like invite more people in. And then eventually that changes the market, and then we get investment. And then if we get investment, you get a level of permanence that you're not going to have without like no one's. I've done a lot of stuff with lower league soccer too, NPSL, of course, USL, USL2. I've seen like Elm City Express, RIP. We literally won the league. We won the NPSL, beat out 95 teams in our first ever year. And then the team didn't have a place to play the next year, and it was gone the third year. And that's what happens with a lot of these teams. So like this idea of making sure there was some kind of permanence in the game by getting it investment and attracting investors. We changed the market from soccer being marketed to families and moms and kids to soccer being marketed to young adults with disposable income. And like married was, I forget the acronym in economics, but it's like a couple married, no kids. Like, like people who want to drink beer and swear. You used to not be able to drink beer and stand up and swear at games and stuff. And so we changed all that to make it more like soccer is around the world, and just a little bit more welcoming and safer for everyone.
Okay. Well, I mean, sounds like you guys did a dope job. I've seen the atmosphere for games, like watching it on TV, like it looks like a very lively atmosphere. But we know with that, some people will get in positions and they get drunk with power. And they kind of change, and the person who they are outside of soccer isn't who they technically are. When they're leaving another group of people. So I want to give you the space to tell your story. Can you lay out for us what happened between you and the supporters groups there in Austin?
Yeah, so I mean, Los Verdes, ATX, and La Merga de Austin, a very small but influential amount of people worked really hard over months to essentially like ruin my life. They were campaigning for people to file complaints about me. They were spreading rumors. They were continually attacking my character. They claimed that I like grabbed and hit them. Every black trope that you can think of, every black trope, literally almost every single major black trope that we have to deal with, especially in professional environments, but also just in general. I had to deal with these people. Like, they were telling me like, I don't know what racism is when I'm bringing things up. It was really terrible. But like, since I was one of the people that literally helped get Los Verdes going and was there from the very beginning, it was really hurtful. I think the red flags really should have gone off for me when the first ever Austin FC game happened. And we were playing away to LA, and it was still the COVID period. So like they weren't even sure they were going to let away fans in the stadium. So not a lot of people traveled. Not a lot of people had the money to travel either, because it was even more expensive to be in LA at that point. And the Merga, the band, I was in the band. I've always been a capo, on the stands and starting all the chants and getting the crowd going. We went to go play downtown an event, and we had a party bus, and we had a lot of fun on this party bus. We ended up coming back to our bar, our local brewery, our bar. And I was very drunk. But, part of being experienced with soccer is like knowing when you're drunk and knowing when you need to slow down. I think that's like part of like what I've learned as a hardcore supporter, because I've gone all over the world. I've solo traveled, and you've got to look after yourself. You can be drunk, but you've got to sober up enough to get home and be safe. You can't be out there like getting in trouble and being wild and irresponsible. Like there's a moment where you're like, okay, I'm drunk now. I'm just going to drink water, or I'm just going to hold on to this same beer for 2 hours, which is I've gotten really good at, because I told you growing up in Irish culture, if your beer is empty, someone would fill it up. So you had to get really good at drinking your beer very slowly. And yeah, when I was a kid and I'd watch 8 hours of soccer on a Sunday or a Saturday, um, like I got really good at like, having to pace myself. But yeah, I was pretty drunk when we got back to the bar in the beginning, and I was like, okay, I'm not drinking, going to get food. I'm just going to hang out. And so for 3 hours, I didn't drink, and I felt pretty good. I was like, yeah, I'm happy. We're, first game, everyone's singing and dancing. The smokes are going and everyone's having like a really good time. The staff at the brewery was drinking, which is probably really that's where the problem really started. So, I mean, gosh, this story still, it hurts my soul. It hurts my soul, but it's the beginning of everything. So I'm in the bathroom, and one of the managers comes out of the other stall. I'm washing my hands. She is drunk. She is slurring her words and swaying, right? And I say to her, I was like, hey, are you guys going to stick around after you guys close for like another hour? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I kind of just wanted to have like one more beer. And, at this point, I'm one of the capos. We've been heavily promoting this place. Like, we packed this place. And I was like, hey, can I just hang out with you for another hour or just have another beer? Like, it's our first ever game, exciting times. And she was like, oh, yeah. This is a white woman or a white Latino woman. And she walks out of the bathroom. We walk out together. And I go to stand in line for beer. Again, I have not had beer for 3 hours. The last drink I had, it was daylight. And then this is like 9 o'clock at night. Like this is like I'm back. For a moment there, I was just hanging out, listening to the music, but I'm back now. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, I just want one more beer, one last little nightcap, and then so I go in online, and I see the drunk manager stumble over to the bartender and say something. And I'm like, what's she was looking at me, the bartender looks at me, and I'm like, this is very confusing. So I get to the bar, and she's like, well, you're cut off. And I was like, well, why am I cut off? For me, I always ask why. I think it's another thing about Irish culture is like, if you're at a place that's like your local and your establishment and you go there a lot, you form relationships. But I think what I grew up on was those relationships, you want to protect people and be there for people. Drunk people usually don't know they're drunk. That's part of it. So like, for them, it's like, if they're like, oh, we think you've had enough, they literally put a water in front of you. And if you ask like, hey, what's going on? They'll be like, well, you're slurring your words and you're stumbling, or you like broke a glass or something. They'll tell you why you're being cut off, because it's important that you know, because just because you cut someone off doesn't mean they're automatically safe, right? Especially if they don't know their level of intoxication. So like, I grew up in a culture where people would just tell you, hey, your eyes are like super red. You can barely look at me right now. Your eyes are moving in two different directions. Or like, hey, like you were nodding off a second ago, or like just something like something, anything. And I watched it happen. And again, it wasn't like, do you want water? It's like, no, I'm just going to put a water in front of you because you need water. Because a lot of times drunk people aren't aware enough to be like, oh, okay. But at this point, I'm not that drunk anymore. I'm like pretty good. Like I said, it's been hours since I have drank anything. I've eaten. Like, I'm not anywhere near like out of control or like even like that tipsy anymore. I'm like practically sober at this point. Again, it's just been a few hours since I had anything to drink. So I just asked the bartender, why am I cut off? And she's like, she didn't have a reason. She probably didn't get a reason from the drunk manager who whispered in her ear and said, cut this person off. So then they call over the other manager, and the other manager was playing with his band last night, and he was drinking IPAs. So he was also drunk. And I was just like, so why am I being cut off? And he was like, we don't have to have a reason. And I was like, well, I think it's appropriate to have a reason, and I'm kind of sussing this out too, just for safety reasons. Like, I'm like, yo, I'm black. And if I'm going to be telling other black people to come here, I need to make sure they are safe. I need to make sure that they are safe in this brewery, that if they decide to get drunk or have a good time, that no one's going to mess with them. Because, you know, some people are like, yo, never get drunk around white people, like, because people lose their inhibitions. And I've been in situations where people have tried to endanger me in my life because their inhibitions go away. And all of a sudden, that dark side of them shows itself that they spend a lot of time hiding in the rest of their lives. And so, like, yeah, like, I basically was like, you know, I was like, could you tell me why? I was like, am I slurring my words? Am I stumbling? Are my eyes red? What is the reason that I'm being cut off? Like, and he was like, well, we're just going to call the cops. Went right to the cops. Like, and I was like, well, why are you calling the police? Like, what did I do to warrant? I was like, I'm going to leave. Like, he's like, well, you can't leave. And I rode my bicycle that day. And I live with him walking distance of the brewery and the stadium, right? I was like, I'm just going to walk my bike home, right? And he's like, well, if you try to walk your bike home, we'll call the police. And I was like, well, you're threatening me with the police if I stay. You're threatening me with the police if I go. Like, you're trying to say that you're trying to look out for me, but you didn't get me water. You didn't sit me down. You didn't offer an Uber. You didn't tell me to leave my bike there overnight, right? It was only after you threatened me. And I didn't immediately shut up because a lot of white people will threaten black people with the police as a way to shut us up. And I didn't immediately back down. And he was like, you know, I was like, yeah, like you're backing it up now. Now you're offering me an Uber. Now you're offering me this. And I was like, no, I don't feel safe anymore. And, you know, I get upset because this is 2021. You're threatening a black person with police. You're saying that if I walk my bicycle home, you're going to call the cops and say I'm drunk on the streets. Mm-hmm. How is that going to end well for me? That puts me in danger. Real danger. I don't know how those police are going to react. The call you get as a police officer of like, oh, just somebody's walking in the street versus someone's drunk walking in the street, their reactions are going to be very, very, very different. And I was frustrated because at no point, like nowhere in the world are you going to go where they're going to tell you it's illegal to walk your bike home drunk. That's like saying you can't walk home. Like, and I wasn't stumbling. I wasn't like at the level of public intoxication because I was not at that level of like being publicly intoxicated. That was not what was happening. I sobered up like almost completely. I had literally asked to stay another hour just because I was enjoying the atmosphere, enjoying the moment. And if they didn't want me to stay, they could have just said no. It was so shady. I literally watched this drunk manager stumble out of the bar, slur over to the other bartender, and then suddenly I'm in trouble. And she just walked off in the back.
I wanna pivot real quick, but I wanna just say like that's a lot to deal with because as African Americans, like we've been put in those situations so many times where we always been told, oh, you got to have grace, or you got to show grace, or you can't be the aggressor, and things like that. And you know that situation could have played out totally differently. You know, versus if that's a black man, or if that it could have played out totally differently. The other incident that happened with Austin SC supporter group. Can you dive into that situation? What happened there?
I mean, like I said, there's been like dozens of incidents. Some were really bad. Like, I mean, like I said, we almost, this could have been a 2 or 3 part series about like the seriously, the level of racism I faced and the gaslighting. And at this point, I was the only like one of 2 active black members of this entire organization. And like the other black person was like, yeah, I didn't grow up in black culture. I don't really care. You know what I mean? And it was kind of like, it was really rough. That was really hard to deal with because they were kind of trying to prop this person up and like use us against each other. Like the other black girl, that show that came out this past year where there's 2 black people in an organization and like sometimes not all skin folk are kinfolk and some people are about the culture, some people aren't. And she's like, I didn't grow up in the culture. Yep. She's like, I didn't grow up in the culture, but then also like she wasn't standing up for me as another black person. And that was really hard too. But there's 2 more major incidents I'm going to talk about. Maybe dude, it's so hard. I'm trying to like the stories I have are so disturbing that whenever I tell them, people can't believe this occurred. Like, they can't believe the level of BS. So this is the other story. Well,
I just want you to know, I can believe you because I done been in some of my own horror stories. I definitely can believe you. You believe you.
Yeah. People like, oh, the result, the ending result. Like, again, this could be its own odyssey. This is an entire part of like my memoir. This is like one of those defining moments of your life, periods of your life, where these people literally try to break me down and crush me, all while saying they weren't racist and raising Black Lives Matter flags. It was really, really, really difficult. Austin FC's first ever game, they didn't have an Austin FC banner. They didn't have a Somos Verdes banner. They didn't have a This Is Austin banner. The banner for the march on the opening game was Black Lives Matter. And if you look at the pictures, there was not a single Black person in any of the pictures of the march, right? And they wanted me to lead the march, which I didn't feel comfortable with because it wasn't my decision to go with the Black Lives Matter banner. I didn't think it was applicable to the situation, and I didn't want to be like a token, right? I was like, they didn't like that I didn't want to be tokenized. They didn't like that. I was like, no, I'm not here to be tokenized. I shouldn't even be considered a token, right? Like, I've done enough. I have legitimate credentials here. But they handed me a two-pole banner, and it was another Black Lives Matter banner. And I just remember it was like 5 minutes before the march was supposed to start. And I just remember like frantically running around trying to find another Black person to give this two-pole to. And I ran around for like 5 or 10 minutes frantically trying to find another Black person to give this two-pole to, because I had Kappa responsibilities. I had to help lead the march. I had to keep people on the side, or keep people safe, make sure, they were like not going over the railroad tracks and like they're marching the correct way, because it was our first march ever. So just like with American Outlaws, when you lead the march, you have certain responsibilities in terms of like, I've led marches with literally 20,000 people before. You have to make sure everyone is safe. And because you're part of the organization, like if they're not safe, it's coming back on you. So got to be extra diligent. But yeah, that'll always stick with me is, the running around desperately trying to find someone to hand the Black Lives Matter two-pole to. I finally found a couple. They're the only Black couple. Finally found them. I hand them the two-pole.
I want to ask you, like you made an important part about saying tokenized, and so many. I feel like a lot of the prominent Black voices in soccer media or in soccer culture here in America, that always seems to be like a key point for us. Like, we don't want to be tokenized, right? Like, we were having a conversation at our WhatsApp group, and the point come up about why are soccer teams only hit me up to work in the month of February, right? There's 11 other months in the year. I do work in those 11 other months. Why is it only February? And we get so I'll speak for myself. I worry a lot of the times that the work that I'm doing in and out of the soccer space is going to be viewed as tokenism to others that are not in the soccer space. You get what I'm saying? Like, but I know in my heart, I'm doing it for good reasons, right? And also in that same aspect, I'm pretty sure you've dealt with the same feelings of, like, if I don't do it, I know it's going to get done half done. Or I know it's not going to have that level of care to it.
Oh, yeah.
So
like,
I want to ask you this: like, how did you maneuver and navigate those feelings you had?
It was really hard because, like, in this situation, I knew I wasn't a token, and I didn't want to be a token. And they were mad when I told them I wasn't their token. I just said it. I was like, hey, I'm not your token here. Like, and you guys, again, you're marching with this Black Lives Matter banner, and you've got the Black Lives Matter banner in the stadium every game, in the supporter section every game, and all this anti-racism banners and stuff. You shouldn't be offended if you're going to put yourselves in that pedestal that I'm being honest and saying, like, I don't want to be a token. That's like part of it. That's literally just part of accepting that Black Lives Matter. That's like part of the statement. It's saying, like, I don't have to be your token. Like, especially like, this is not like what we do for work. This is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be what I do on my day off. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm always like just on. You know, you want to be able to relax too. Soccer is crazy. Austin FC crowds, you look at people, they're going absolutely crazy. So like, again, if white people, Latino people, Asian people are allowed to have that much fun, then Black people should be. This is another reason I got into soccer. This is huge. This is another reason I got into soccer, was because I saw a lot of people in Europe, especially Black people all over the world, screaming and shouting and jumping up and down. I got to tell you, there's a lot of things in American culture that make people want to scream, shout, and jump up and down. And we are not allowed to, as Black people, enough in our culture. So I thought to myself, gosh, I would really love to be part of something that's cathartic, that like gets people up and out of their seats, and I can jump up and down and sing and chant and have a good time. I really want to get involved in that, and other Black people to be invited involved. And for me, like, I feel like I'm like the ultimate litmus test of if someone is really like an ally, if someone really believes or wants to learn about the principles of just being a big Black lesbian with a big mouth who has a presence about her. And I feel like people who are insecure, especially men who are insecure, or women who've only valued themselves based on what other men think of them, they lose their minds when it comes to me. Like some people, like, again, are super cool, but like it seems like the same type of characters every time have an issue with me, and I wish it wasn't like that. But it was literally like the same thing happening. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough because you know, you are representing your race and culture, which is a lot of pressure for Black people. And when people talk about that, the pressure of people constantly basically putting you in situations where you have to represent your race as a whole. White people never deal with that. Like, nobody sees a white man and goes, he's going to shoot up a school. Sees a white man and goes, yeah, nobody ever sees a white man and goes, that guy's probably a serial killer. Let me cross the street. You know, like, it doesn't happen like that. But when you're Black, people, like, if you do something wrong, people are like, oh, it's Black, the blacks are this, the Blacks are that. And so it is a lot of pressure. But it's just like, it's frustrating because you have people propagating things like Black Lives Matter, and basically for me, it's like, if you are waving these banners, if you're making them, if you're projecting this image, you at least have to do the basics. And the basics are accepting when Black people don't want to be tokens, accepting Black people in leadership, accepting Black people for their expertise, listening to them, even if you don't want to really don't want to hear it, at least listening to them, respecting them. It's like, you don't have to like me, you don't have to be my friend, but you can respect me, right? You can respect me. And they couldn't respect me as a person. And like, again, like, we only talked about like one incident, really. Yeah, one incident. And like, I've got so many more. I mean, like, here's another one. This is like, I'm doing this chronologically right now. We had the first ever game incident where, you know, the bar tries to have me like arrested, and they ended up like dragging me out of there, and like, you know, it was crazy. And it's so funny because I ended up riding my bike home anyway, because I was like, they're like, are you good? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And they were like, yeah, you are fine. And I was like, yeah, I am fine. Like, this is ridiculous. And again, why am I being singled out? Of course. Like, but, you know, again, the first ever home game where Black Lives Matter band, I'm trying to run around to find another Black person. They're asking me to lead the march, but also like take care of all like the kind of like, asked me to do a lot. And that, you know, that was a little bit frustrating. That should have been another red flag for me about what this was really about. Then the third thing is when first of all, getting this, the first thing resolved was a nightmare. People were like, oh, are you sure this happened? Are you sure it was racist? Are you sure, you know, are you sure it's racism? Are you sure? Are you positive? Like, what do you want to happen? Or they were like all freaking out and scared. I was like, just have a conversation with the freaking manager, guys. Like, racism is like not a deal breaker for anybody white. I mean, you could still be a billionaire CEO. You can be president and be a racist. Like, it's no matter what Yeah, if you're racist, guess what? The racism still isn't happening to you, right?
There was a famous quote. I forgot who said it. It was like a basketball player, and he said that there's only deal breakers for black people when it comes to us wearing jewelry and stuff. When it comes to white players and racism, they can be racist, but as long as they produce on the field, they can look bypassing. And I mean that's certainly true, and unfortunately sad as well and whatnot.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, I know we could honestly we could talk days on end about all the stuff that happened,
I feel like this
but
should
it
be
seems
part one.
yeah.
I didn't
uh,
even get into the good stuff yet. That was just the beginning. I didn't even
well,
get into the good
I
stuff.
want you to save that for the memoir. You got to save that stuff for the book. You got to
I don't
save
know
that for the book.
the physical violence. I have to tell this last story because this is the most defining moments and also one of the most sad moments. First ever Houston away trip, Austin FC at Houston. There is a massive brawl between Austin fans and Houston fans. Houston fans charged the Austin fans in the away section. They're fighting in the concourse. They're fighting up the stairs. They're fighting in the stands. Children are screaming. People don't know what's happening. 80 people are like brawling. It's really dangerous. And I'm like, oh shit. And because I've done crowd control enough, I literally see who's instigating. A lot of people who are instigating this are in leadership. They're in elected positions. They're in leadership. They're the ones in meetings of the club, et cetera, et cetera. They're the ones who got to be responsible, right? And they're over there fighting and throwing punches, right? So I'm like, oh shit. So I end up, basically doing more crowd control. And I've done plenty of that, and trying to break people up and trying to like keep more people from coming in and like make sure people aren't in a place where they don't have to be. Even just maneuvering in that situation is really, really hard. I could literally, I could talk all day about a lot of things, including crowd control and keeping football supporters safe. But yeah, after this match, what had happened, which we didn't find out later, is that like 4 Austin fans, the Houston away or Houston home section, and threw a green smoke bomb in their home section, which
that definitely started a fight. Yeah, that started a fight.
Anywhere on the planet, like that's, and what's crazy is that's a perma ban. That's literally anywhere else in the world. That is a permanent ban from the league. Forget Houston Stadium, the league, because like people get stabbed, people get hurt when things like that happen. Like Atlas versus Kevitaro, like there's things that happen because of things like that. So after the game, I've been hit by grown men in this game. I've been shoved and pushed around by people wearing the same colors as I am. It was traumatic. At midnight, it would be my birthday. So it was like, it's supposed to be my birthday weekend. And dudes fighting and trying to make sure people are safe. And at that point, we were trying to hold people back because a lot of people like didn't understand soccer culture where the away fans stay back and stay behind while the home fans leave. And especially because we had such a big fight, it was really hard for people to like stop and listen to us. Because American sports, everyone just leaves, right? But like we were like, no, for your you need to stay back. And people didn't want to do it, and I was getting shoved out of the way. And yeah, people on the way back who left, they got robbed. They got their stuff stolen. People in the band got things stolen because they didn't listen. And it sucks. But you like we were trying to keep you safe. And you shove people out of the way, and then you get beaten up and robbed because you didn't listen to your fellow supporter who's trying to keep you safe. That's a shame. But like the next day, I get a call, and I'm sorry, I get a very lengthy text message from a new capo, a person who is quoted on MLSsoccer.com of saying, before April 2001, I didn't care about soccer. Right? This person's literally quoted in the same article as I am on MLSsoccer.com, being like, I didn't care about soccer until our Denver away game, like first season. Didn't care, not in the consciousness at all. I get a long, lengthy message from them. This person wasn't even there, by the way. She wasn't there. Her husband wasn't there. I get a long length of these in my character and what I did wrong, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And I'm like, wait a minute. So out of 400 people, I'm the only Black person. You weren't there. Right. And I'm not an elected leadership at this point. I'm not an elected leader. Right. You weren't there. But you're going to insinuate that I contributed to the violence and I contributed to the negative part of the situation. This is just like a racist trope. This is like, black people getting blamed for violence just because we exist and we're there. What made it even more messed up was one of the people who actually did throw the smoke bomb was on the board and was another capo in leadership. And they protected him and they didn't tell anybody what he did. So I'm taking the heat in the group chat and people are talking about me, but this other white Latino guy, he's being protected and no one knows what he did. He got banned from Austin FC for 6 months. He got banned from Houston Stadium, but he was allowed to serve that 6 months in the off season. No one ever found out what he did until his ban was almost over. He got elected back into leadership because nobody knew he was responsible for people getting beaten up and their kids being traumatized and all this kind of stuff because they protected him. Meanwhile, I was shoved out in the forefront. So I'm frustrated. I go to one of the other board members and I'm like, listen, this girl, it's getting kind of racist at this point. She's they were mad at me because I posted in the group chat. I got in trouble because I called her husband a dick and an asshole. They were like, we're giving you a warning, and if you get another warning, you're going to be kicked out of the organization. Meanwhile, this girl can send me this lengthy message right after this traumatic incident, and it's fine. But she doesn't get in trouble or talk to, but I do. And then they were mad that I brought that up. Again, this is the people who are posting Black Lives Matter and all this kind of stuff, And I went to a board member and I said, this is what happened. It's really bothering me. We need to have a talk about this because it's kind of racist. It's not okay for me to be blamed for this violent incident and scapegoated for this violent incident when it had nothing to do with me. And this person wasn't even there. Right. And when I reported it to this board member, he was literally just ripping a vape pen, just ripping it. And it was not nicotine. And he was like, well, I'm crying. I'm in tears. I'm at the TIFO warehouse at this point. I'm in tears. I'm at the TIFO warehouse. And he was, this is still painful for me. He's like, oh, do you want to hit? It might make you feel better. And I was like, no. Oh, weed is not going to make me feel better about racism happening to me, man. It's not going to make me feel better about this. This is not it. But I said it's he reads the chat and literally laughs at me. And he says, you said she was kind of racist. You said she was racist. I said she was kind of racist. I literally said that in the chat, just with her, hoping that she would back off because it was kind of racist. You're blaming me for something violent that happened. And you're trying to tell me that you're being my friend, but it's my birthday and you've never texted me before. It's just not true. This is just nastiness. Yeah. And I think anybody Black would recognize that kind of nastiness. And again, this organization's claiming Black Lives Matter, but allowing for Black people to be scapegoated and harassed. And yeah, so he laughs in my face. I'm frustrated. Then what happens is they kicked me off the capo stand, and they said in the message I was sent, by the same dude who was part of that group that flew that smoke bomb, because again, nobody knew what he did, right? So he was the one who sent me the message of being like, we're kicking you off the capo stand. Accusations of racism are really hurtful. And the only thing that they specified in the message that I did was accusations of racism, and they removed me from the capo stand. So then I had to file a formal complaint with Austin FC. And I'm at a crossroads with myself of these people are supposed to be my friends. I'm going to be stuck with them, because this club's not going away, right? They're all thinking in terms of weeks, and I'm thinking of this is going to affect the next 5 years. So I was like, how seriously do I want to take this? Like, how seriously do I want to take my complaint? And my complaint was very general because I didn't want to become the boogeyman. I didn't want that retaliation of she complained to the club about racism. And I didn't want to deal with, the scapegoating happening, which I've felt before. And in a sense where like, I almost complained to Liverpool as official supporters club about the way I was being treated in New Haven. It got so bad. I was being berated in the bar. It was horrible. And so like, yeah, I filed this formal complaint because I needed them to know like this is serious and important. Like I'm one of your only Black members. You're having all this projected images of being welcoming to Black people, and soccer community at this point. On the Anfield Wrap, which is the biggest Liverpool podcast in the world. Like I've been to World Cups. I've capoed 100 games or so. Across all competitions, all professional competitions. And like this person who just walked up to Austin FC after it already got going, you're going to choose them over me. Like even just this one time is pretty insane. And so, they kicked me off the capo stand. I had to file a formal complaint with the club. The club, of course, said they couldn't really do anything. And nobody, until like 6 months later. Meanwhile, I'm getting scapegoated and people are saying, well, you just called her racist and that's terrible. And I was like, well, what she did to me was pretty terrible. And it all snowballed from there. It all just got really nasty from there. I had to fight with them to get back on the capo stand. Mm-hmm. And they almost removed me a second time. And the third time, they finally just kicked me out of Murga, citing an incident that happened a month before, which is even more racist. Somehow in over like 20, 25 games I capoed, I was never allowed to capo the center capo stand. Not even for 10 minutes. We have 3 capo stands, one on the left, one on the right, one in the center. And I was the only capo that was never allowed the center capo stand. Like not once in 20 plus games and multiple seasons. Mistake. Mm-hmm. We got sideline access as supporters for flags and stuff. Austin FC was very lenient, and I think too lenient to like one random person, like who was in the group, one of the leaders, to hand out to other people. So they were giving this person like additional power that they kind of didn't deserve. It was like at their discretion of like who they wanted to hand it out to. And we were supposed to rotate, and they never did. So somehow I never got a wristband to have sideline access ever. The only person who ever gave me a wristband was a couple times a guy at the club directly. And they would trade wristbands, take their wristband off and give it to another person. And somehow no one ever traded wristbands with me. And I was prevented from joining committees. I was accused of like grabbing people or hurting them when it never happened. There's a lot of things that occurred that were really traumatic, and like this can be part one, because like we haven't even talked about me being clinically diagnosed with PTSD so bad that I couldn't walk in the stadium. I would just have panic attacks. I was having really bad suicidal ideation, nightmares, all the worst side effects of PTSD, in terms of like your executive function becoming limited. Eventually I missed 7 months of work in a 12-month period. Even the way the board was really shady. There was no input from membership at all. It was just other board members, no input from membership at all. And when I was trying to organize a restorative circle about racism, there was a bunch more incidents in between, but I was trying to like have the club help us reconcile this by hosting a restorative circle about racism, to talk about racism, talk about bias, and basically do DEI training, right? And the club was pressuring me. The charitable organization, the 4ATX Foundation, they were like, do you really want to do this as a big group, or do you want to like name names? And I was like, I don't want to name names because they're going to retaliate against me. I don't want to do it. And then for months and months, like we got the funding, we got like $10,000 of funding approved, right? They got the funding, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do this. but they were really pressuring me. They were like, do you really want to do a speak? And I was like, no, if I name names, it's me. And I'm worried about my safety and my ability to kind of function in this community. But eventually I broke down and I was like, fine, whatever. And so I mentioned the names of people in leadership that I thought could benefit the most. They're like, who do you think could benefit the most from learning about DEI issues? So the week they started calling people to participate is also the week that a special meeting was called and I was thrown off the board. And yeah, they all knew that I was trying to get with the club to kind of plan something about racism and things like that. Off that same week, they did it. So it corresponded, like I was going to the Champions League final in 2022, and they like did it the day before I left. The day I got kicked off the board was also the Uvalde shooting, and I was the first one to start coordinating our response within our group of that because I'm from Connecticut, and I went through Sandy Hook like literally 10 years before. Soccer bar when we were like reacting to that happening, and I know how hurtful and painful it could be, and I was actually confused about why no one was interacting with me about planning something for Uvalde. What are we going to do? And then somebody else had created a different thread and people were responding and talking and coordinating on that, and I was like, that's interesting. But like Uvalde, like I said, like, hey, can we delay our special meeting today because of like this tragedy that happens? I think it's appropriate. And they're like, no, we're having the meeting. And I was like, okay, fine. So yeah, we have the meeting. It was the first time we've ever met about my conduct. They never had any input from other supporters. I got over 600 votes for my board position. And they threw me off. And then the MRGA found a reason to throw me off. It was just, again, like lots and lots of old school white collar racism.
Yeah. Man, those stories, they cut deep. Definitely do. And I can hear that your voice like is cracking, telling this again. And trust me, like I want you to know, you are very brave for not only going through these experiences, but coming out on the other side of it and being able to tell these stories, right? Because these are stories and whatnot that future generations are going to encounter and need to know how to navigate and know that, like, hey, you're not the first one to go through it. So I want to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Now that you've been through all this and everything like that, how was it coming out on the other side of it? How was it coming out on the other side of everything that happened with the Austin FC situation?
Well, it's been hard. It's been really hard because the club has been a bit duplicitous. I told them, I was like, I just want a capo again. It would really help my PTSD. My therapist, I got 2 black therapists now. It's awesome. Get a black therapist, y'all. If you don't have a black therapist, get one. It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. Get a black therapist. Places like BetterHelp. If there's no black therapist around you, you can use BetterHelp or something like that. They take insurance. Like, get a black therapist. And the club was really placating me. I was like, I just need to capo again, even if it's just once or twice. No one's gonna like it. You don't like be racist and like drive someone out of an organization and then be happy if they end up on the capo stand again. Like, people aren't gonna like it, but like, you've got to let me do it. And I said, here's the thing. I was like, listen, I really want to just go up there and say fuck it and go up there, but I'm not gonna do it because we're in Texas. And if you're gonna have security come up there, have me arrested by police and throw me out of the stadium, then I can't do that. And Austin FC is trying to tell me, well, the fans control the capo stand. And I'm like, okay, but if you're telling me that if I get up there, you're going to have me arrested. So which one is it? And there was no, Austin FC doesn't have a supporters union. There was no guidelines for supporters group or anything like that. It was the MRGA. It was one group, La MRGA de Austin, controlling the capo stands. No one else had a real say in anything else. which is also very dangerous. I know like most clubs don't do that because, again, one group gets drunk on power. Usually these things happen years before, and they fix the problem. I don't know, they created a monsters among fans who just thought they could do whatever they wanted. And there's people who are getting in multiple fights, violence, people who are sharing information, non-disclosure agreements. There was people who were assaulted, all sorts of stuff. But if they were in leadership and they were in the kind of majority ethnic group that was Los Verdes, they were like protected. An example of that was we had to sign up to see the new jersey for 2022. I was on the board at that point, and the La Amarga board, Los Verdes board, and Austin Anthem board all met with the club to talk about the season. And it was crazy because they were like, well, what kind of music do you want played in the beginning? What do you want to happen at the beginning of the match? Like, when do you want the music to announcements? Like, when do you want to do this? When do you want to do that? It was like they were giving us a lot of control, and they were giving a lot of control to people who weren't really into soccer before. He's in the group of supporters that was doing this before there was an ESPN camera in front of them, and Matthew McConaughey was right next to them, or Vince Young, right? Like this wasn't. It wasn't like a lot of people became involved because they saw an opportunity for attention and a level of prestige that they might have not had otherwise. And it was never about the soccer. It was about the attention, celebrities. Again, something that wasn't happening at most other clubs. At least LAFC had a soccer culture. Like, they had the Chivas fans. They had a soccer culture already. They were already people who were organizing and doing things.
Yeah.
Like Austin, where everything was just handed over and the fans just ran amok. But it was just too hard. There's so many things. Yeah, but we were in this boardroom, and I just remember we're about to sign this fat NDA, and the president of Los makes a comment that was just like, if you don't have 4 names, you're not Mexican enough. And everyone just laughed. And I don't remember if I laughed or if I just kind of smiled to fit in, but I was like, what the hell? We're in a boardroom in a semi-professional, just said that if you don't have 4 names, you're not Mexican enough. And everyone was like dying laughing. And I was like, what? What's going on here? Like, what's happening? And like, but I don't know, the way I was treated was both racist and xenophobic. There was a lot of Mexico fans who hated the fact that I was a USA Capo, and I never even really broached the topic a lot because I didn't want to create that kind of divisiveness in the community. There's one thing that Texas did not need more of was like white people versus Mexican people, or like Mexican people versus black people, or white Mexican people versus each other. Like Austin's very segregated, so it was like the white people had one part of town, the black people had another part of town, the Mexicans had another part of town. They didn't mix, right? Yeah. So I didn't want to bring that into Austin FC culture from the beginning. So it's like, even like was I going to start off initially? And I still kind of feel weird about it because I'm like, I want to bring people together with this game. I don't want to have separate but equal. I don't want to bring that into it. But there was a lot of like nasty xenophobic behavior, and I felt like I couldn't bring that up because that would almost be worse than racism. Can you imagine if I was like I'm in this supporters group called Los Verdes, which is supposed to be for everything, like y'all means all, right? Y'all means all. That's the song, right? And imagine if I was like, hey, you guys are treating me this way because I support the U.S. teams and I'm American. That would have been so divisive in like the first year. It was worse for me that I went with, like, I could have gone with xenophobia and had that be the primary focus. Because it was really obvious. Like, I don't have a problem with Mexico fans or Mexican people or anything. Like, I have an issue with Mexico's team, and I have an issue with the fans in the stadium. And if they shout homophobic chants or throw full beers at our players and hit them in the head with a can. I have an issue with that. But I've like my social media. I've never said anything negative about a Latino person in my life. It's a huge part of my culture, being Black and a Puerto Rican family from New York. So it's just they tried to say that I was racist against Latinos, doing racist tropes, reverse racism tropes. So they tried to say I was racist against Latinos, and they just made things up. It was really, really tough, but I just every month, every couple of weeks, I was just reminded that they were just trying to put me down. Like the Capo leadership literally was like in practice. We had practice. We had to practice. The band had practice and the Capos had to be there. We had Capo practice. And like they wanted to run it. They were like, y'all means all, we're all together, everybody's equal, but then we're gonna run this like a fraternity, like a hierarchy in a fraternity where you have to do with the leaders. You all have to think the same as we do, or else. And that's not really part of what soccer culture means to me.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I totally get that because, if everyone's thinking the same, that means you're not being progressive and thinking ideas differently. Imani, as we start to kind of wrap up this, put a bow on this, right? Because like I said, I want you to keep the good stories for the memoir because we got to make that money. I want to ask you this. What is next for you? And what is some advice that you have for Black supporters or Latin, Asian, LGBTQ plus supporters that might be going through some of the same issues or dealing with some of the same things that you unfortunately had to deal with?
That's really tough. I was recognized by US Soccer in 2022 for both Black History Month and Women's History Month. And I was the first person to be recognized that wasn't a player or a coach, right? And I was recognized for breaking barriers in sport, et cetera, et cetera. But as a kid, I used to say I never wanted to be first in Black at anything because all I saw was Black people who were first at something being harassed or murdered or killed, right? I didn't want to be the first Black anything because it later, I guess it just happens to you. Like I didn't even realize that I was probably the first Black female. Like there was no one else in the country, maybe even the world, doing the things that I was doing at the level that I was doing them, and still am in a way I try. And so, as much as I really want to be really positive and like have this like amazing, inspiring message and kind of be like, hell yeah, the truth is, this has torn me apart for 2 years. This has absolutely grinded me down. It's taken something that was my absolute passion that's gotten me through other traumatic experiences in my life, whether it's like homelessness or like the death of my father, just like things that were really terrible. Soccer was there for me. That community through soccer was there for me. The soccer community is the first community I ever came out to. And they accepted me when I wasn't really accepted at home. So soccer went from being something that was healing and restorative to me to something that was giving me lots of trauma. And people were like, don't let them take this away from you. And I was like, I didn't let them. You know what I mean? I didn't let them. But you torture someone, you gaslight them, you make you rob them of their literal joy in life that is their joy. Everyone knows, right? Like, and it affects you, and it still affects me. Like, I still have nightmares. The season's coming up. I'm worried and scared. The plan for this year, I cannot have a year like I had last year. Like I said, I missed 7 months of work in a 12-month period. I made like $12,000 at my full-time job. I had to hustle just to like exist. It really, really, really messed me up. I can't even begin. Like, I've sent so many sad messages to friends and disturbing messages to friends that don't know what else to do. Like, when you have suicidal ideation, your brain is not only telling you to end your life, but showing you. So like my brain will just show me stabbing myself in the throat like multiple times a day, or like doing other terrible things to myself. radiation can't be stopped because it's CPTSD, so it puts you back in the place where you were when all this was going on. For me, it was just a very, very dark place, and I'm still worried for myself at this point. I'm still a bit scared for myself because it's so like I can't escape myself. Like I can't escape my own mind. You can't just like leave the room, right? Like your brain is there. And I know all the grounding techniques and all this, that, and whatever, but sometimes like if I can't sleep at night because I have this terrible suicidal ideation because I was scrolling on my phone and Austin FC has this really big photo of somebody who and even though I don't want to feel anything, I still do. It's really rough. So I'm just trying. I desperately want the club to keep their word and have me get back on the Kappa stand. I need it to be fair. I shouldn't have to start my own supporters group and get 50 members in order to Kappa again. Okay. I'm so traumatized. I can't go to the stadium. I'm about to pay for my season ticket. And like, I know I can't go to games. So like, match day experience is very different when you're a Kappa where you're gearing up for that. Your match day experience is totally different. It's very strange for me to not be in an environment where and helping out with the atmosphere at the level that I should be, which makes the experience even more traumatic because that's all I did for US Soccer as well. You know, luckily Liverpool is such a big club that there is no Kappas, right? Everyone just kind of sings and gets in it together. And that's one of the things I love about Liverpool. But yeah, like I'm a hot mess and I'm trying to get a new job and I love it. I've reconciled a lot of me, make me feel self-conscious or make me feel ashamed of myself. And I've reconciled. And this is literally like the only trauma left in my life. And unfortunately, like I think about trauma the way, 14-year-old boys think about sex. Like every 5 minutes, you know what I mean?
That's gonna be the tagline of this podcast.
Yeah, like every 5 minutes, and not being able to have a thought about it without feeling like horrible has been really life-changing. Like I couldn't go to games, I couldn't watch games on TV, I couldn't watch. There was a time where I couldn't watch Liverpool games. There was a time I couldn't watch US games. I've missed games that I wasn't feeling well that are in my region, like in Dallas and Houston. It was really hard for me to capo for US games, but they always went pretty well. And that's how I knew it was literally an Austin FC problem. It was like the green, the Verde and black is literally triggering this horrible PTSD reaction. But like I still have a hard time soccer games. Like Liverpool games, the only games I can watch. Maybe a USA game, men or women, maybe. But like that's not like me.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So this has been really, really traumatic. And I really want to talk to people about the health issues because racism is a huge cause of stress and PTSD. As a Black woman, I am in the highest risk demographic for suicide in the United States. And when they talk about Black suicide, one of the reasons is racial discrimination. I had to deal with tons of tropes, angry Black person trope, reverse racism trope, violence, literally trying to Emmett Till me, white tears trope, where like white women would cry and then make up random meeting with the club president, and then after the meeting and after the game, I'd gone down the supporter section, and like the next day I get a text by someone saying, well, did you push someone last night? So-and-so saying you pushed them. Literally just got out of a meeting with the club president. No one knew about it, by the way. Just got out of a meeting with the club president. Now cameras, and they were like, you didn't do anything. Like, and it's frustrating for Austin FC because they're trying to go with and you got to go with equity. Like, I'm traumatized. I'm the only person that's been traumatized like this by the Murga. I'm somebody who doesn't deserve it. The body of work that I've done in the game and how much respect and reverence I have for the game who are involved in soccer, whether they're coaching or playing or creating content or just building things in a local community, local bar. Like I've been to those NPSL games. Like, I have such a respect and love for this game. If there's anybody who deserves an extra getting that love back for the game, it's me, because it's like, it's abusive. It's a relationship now. It's like, but again for Austin FC, so I can replace those really negative memories with really positive ones. And I think the club has to be responsible and just do the right thing. Told me, well, we're not trained for this. We're a new club. They don't have the DI training. They don't have this, that, whatever. Get the training. Like, don't let people get away with horrible. It's funny. You throw a smoke bomb, or you're part of a group that throws that smoke bomb, and then the club knows you did it. The club bans you for 6 months, and they put you in the commercial for the campaign for the next. Like,
that's crazy.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
So, Imani, I just want to say personally, I want to thank you for telling your story, because I know it takes a lot of courage to tell that story after everything you've been through. I'm personally praying for your healing. Where can people reach out to you if they are inspired by your story, need someone to talk to, or want to dive deeper into it with you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me. The best place is probably Twitter. I love Twitter. I'm old school Twitter. Like, I get the best of Twitter because my timeline is always like very, very. So yeah, you can reach out to me on Twitter, LFC. Supporters group. This will be the 4th supporters group I've started. It's just very traumatic for me to even engage in the supporter culture, because that's literally what gave me this PTSD. CPTSD from racial discrimination, racial trauma. So if you feel like helping me with any sort of new supporters group in Austin, reach out for me for that. You can find me at BD rallies, at Liverpool matches. You find me there, being rowdy, starting all the songs. Of course I'm starting all the of the game. I love to sing. I love to shout. So starting games there. Help anyone needs, raising money for kids. There's a little tiny club here that just kind of, they coach poor kids in the neighborhood. And right now they're playing in a kind of like a water outlet of like where all the extra water flows in the city when it rains. A lot. They have like some goalposts, but they need ladders, and they need balls, and they need like supplies. They need like a 5-gallon Gatorade jug. And I think the next thing I'm going to do probably this month for Black History Month, and even just in general, I believe in helping people, is maybe like make an Amazon list for them. So if anybody wants to donate to that, I'll be compiling this Amazon list, and hopefully I'll have it out by the time this episode drops, or the same week as the episode drops. And then I will gift things they need to participate. And that's something that's really important to me. I literally live 1 street away from a U.S. Soccer Foundation pitch, a mini pitch, urban pitch. The kids play there every night. They play every night until the lights turn off. This is Austin. This cities in the country. It's just most people aren't supporting MLS. They're supporting like Mexico teams. They're supporting Brazilian teams. They're supporting other teams. But I kind of love the energy around the stadium here. And again, being in the same neighborhood as the stadium, people know me in this neighborhood. I bike everywhere. People bike, they say, because my bike is just awesome. And I just love it. So any help I can get, kind of raising money for this local team and getting them kind of the tools and supplies they need to go play. So I'm getting really tired and hungry because I haven't eaten anything.
No, I totally understand.
One bite of food. I'm like losing that 1 bite of food. But if anyone wants to help me with that, or doing positive things in the community, or even just help me advocate for myself, or help me with resources to kind of talk to to U.S. Soccer, talk to MLS, and talk about me, because I mean we barely scratched the surface. I think we got things that happened, and about 5% of the way. And I've had to send some scary messages to people, and it's because I have been scared for my life, and desperate for relief, because I don't know if I can go through mentally what I went through last year. Because here's the thing, if you want you to end your life, it takes a lot of energy just to stop that feeling and to not do what your brain's telling you. Like, you know, the way the brain tells you to eat or go to the bathroom, and instead it's telling you to end your life. It incapacitates you. It incapacitates you. You can't invest in yourself. You know, I've gained 50, 60 pounds. My up like 20%, 20, like 10 points on my, whatchamacallit, my heart rate, my resting heart rate. Fit I've ever been in my life. And we all know, for Black people, especially for Black women, that like we need to do things like take care of our health. But the effects of racism on our health and on how we're just able to live and move through the world is serious. In year 2021, the CDC said racism was a national health crisis for Black people because it leads to so many other conditions. And as we try to increase awareness and try to increase participation for Black people in soccer, I think that, you know, if this is happening to me, what's happening to other people out there who maybe don't have as many people who can advocate for them? And I want to speak up for those people, but then also for all those helped and never have to deal with this. Hopefully I'm the only person for a long time that's going to have to deal with this at this extent. But it's devastating. I want to be able to be like, right now, and I've made it, and blah blah blah, but it's not. You know, I'm struggling almost every day. I'm very scared about the season starting. But I just hope Austin FC does the right thing. I have a supporters group. We have the bylaw exists. There might be like 5 of us, but it exists. You know, I haven't built a special website or whatever, but like, you know, what is a supporters group? Is it a social media site and a website? Guidelines. They were trying to get me to help them write the guidelines. And I was like, that's fine, but I still can't go to the stadium, guys. I can't go to matches. So how am I supposed to run a supporters group and recruit and do all this kind of stuff if I can't go to attacks just by walking in the stadium? Or I'll have suicidal ideation right after I leave for the next 2 weeks. So we'll see.
Yeah.
To God, whatever God you believe in.
Look, once again, I applaud you for being able to tell your story. But Imani, I just want to say thank you for being brave enough to tell the story. For listeners out there, once again, if you are struggling with suicide, thoughts of suicide, or mental health, the numbers are provided at the bottom here on the screen. If you're listening via the podcast, the number is 988 or 1-800-662-HELP. So with that being said, Imani, thank you once again. Listeners, we will see you guys next time for our next thrilling story in the Black history and soccer culture. I'll see you guys later. Be easy. Be safe.